Oh, hey, sweet baby Mrs. Sunshine. It's your educator, Miss Skelton, here to lecture you 2.0. Fun things. We're going to get through the vast majority of the terms. For those of you going, why again? Are there so many? Guess what? Because I'm front loading them to you now, I'm going to adjust it on the calendar. I just have slept a lot today and all days. Anyways, and so they're going to be spread out over the next couple of days, especially if you didn't get all of them. Or if I forgot to mention one, it happens sometimes. But what we're going to be focusing on for the next couple of days will be included. Your flashcard terms will be included, and I'll make sure that all of that is pretty and happy for you. Okay? But you should also watch my lectures because I'm cool. Don't tell me I'm not. I swear I am. Anyways, I left you in a place that was not this one. Okay, I was close. Almost. Oh yeah, that didn't go well. Sorry that but why? Why am I like these? Am I like these two? And these. Ugh, hi. Nice to see you. I don't know if you knew, but I had to restart this thing because why would it work well? Anyways, you see our sheeple over here? Over here? Over here? That's William H. Taft at his highest. He's the president who's the one who had to get a new bathtub because he couldn't fit. He was 345 pounds, pure, awesome, Teddy friendly. Yeah, Teddy is his shepherd. So as we know, I think I left you in Man Elkins Act, conservatism, insurgents. I think I left you in dollar diplomacy because I was like, oh no, why don't I have a slide? And I still should say, oh no, why don't I have a slide? Because I totally forgot. Anyways, so Taft does not speak softly and carry a big stick like Teddy does. Instead, Taft puts his money where his mouth is. Some things just are so much louder than others. You don't have to be the loudest talker, biggest looking guy in the room to have the most power. And we all know that. We know money talks. And so, what dollar diplomacy is the idea of the U.S. using private money backed by the U.S. military, of course. Our military might, rather, is the reputation of the Great White Fleet. Let me put it that way. To promote our economic interest. So, for example, we intervene in Nicaragua, and that open door policy in China from John Hay, yeah, that's dollar diplomacy in a nutshell. Using our money to influence places, using our military might to help our money influence places. Casual. Okay. Gosh, if there isn't a mess of an election, we talk about 2020 and we're like, oh, that was bad. We look at the McKinley, William Jennings Bryan 1900 and we go, oh, that was bad. But there were 5 presidential candidates in the election of 1912, and really only 3 of them matter, but 2 of them are really funny. So the 2 guys that you see on the very far side, I don't know why I'm really bad at this. Far side, hey, Eugene V. Debs, the one with the hook nose and very bald, male pattern baldness. So he is the Socialist Party. We've talked about Eugene V. Debs before and socialism as it starts to rise during the Gilded Age, and it's a reasonable response to what most employees were dealing with. Working conditions are still bad. Even though the progressives are trying to actively change that, they're still bad. Call a spade a spade. If you're not getting the wages you need to survive, you know what we should do? We should raise the wage, because otherwise you're not gonna survive. Anyways, And the guy next to him, the little short squat one with the striped socks, that's an adorable man. Roger Chafin? Anyways, and he's the Prohibition Party, because that one's got to be included too. On your political party sheets, you do need to add the Socialist Party. Do it 1912. I believe I've had you add before the Populist Party. If you don't have the Populist Party on the left yet, then you need to make sure that they also are down on the left. Your Democrats are on the left, and then your Republicans are on the right, okay, for this election. Well, don't make your Republicans like loudly right, because they're not loudly right just yet. Because remember, Teddy was a good fan of the Republican Party, okay? Anyways, for the election of 1912, I need to get back into character. So, there were a bunch of national concerns, namely the idea of progressive reforms versus conservative capitalism. Actually, yeah, you don't even need to put the Republicans. I just totally screwed you up. You should just go, Miss Skelton, why do you exist? Why? Self-deprecating humor, that's why I exist. Anyways, Republicans should be on your left. Democrats should be, like, middle of the road. Okay, sorry for that. On the Republican platform, you have William H. Taft, who is our conservative, capitalist, happy, but, like, still claims to be reformist, just a little bit. And then we have Teddy, who looks absolutely crazy in this cartoon. Teddy comes back from Africa and is like, oh, no, you did not, Taft. You were my handpicked successor, and this is the you-know-what you got into? Disappointment. He starts his own political party. Put it on the left, babies. It's called the Progressive Party, also known as the Bull Moose Party. You want to know why? Because Teddy Roosevelt was making a speech, and he gets shot, and he finishes the dang speech, because that's power! Real men! Not really, like, I mean, if I got shot, or if, like, my ex-boyfriend had gotten shot and he, like, started crying, I would totally understand. He didn't get shot, for the record. That is not a story of my ex-boyfriend. Although one time, he did emasculate a man on a sidewalk. That was interesting. Usually that's my job. But nope, he did that for me. Just threw him in the trash can, because he said some little catcally rude thing about me. And so my ex-boyfriend, also known as Teddy Roosevelt, also known as the Bull Moose, just, like, straight up threw a man in a trash can. I mean, if you want to do something like make a political party, throw someone in the trash can, make it through getting shot at a speech and finish that dang speech. That's how you become a bull moose, my children. You transcend the laws of masculinity, and you are now literally a moose. Antlers. Moose. Antlers. Okay. So, the origins of this progressive party, also known as the Bull Moose Party, like I've said. Roosevelt had wanted the Republican nomination, but because of the last 4 years, Taft really controlled the political machine of that party. So, Teddy, making his own political party, has a different kind of platform. It's a new nationalism. Almost every single reform of the day, lower tariffs, women's suffrage, business regulation, ending child labor, 8-hour workday, workers' compensation, because, you know, you get a little nail gun action in your hand, or you get your hand chopped off by the meat grinder. You need some money, because dang, that sucks. Okay. Direct primaries of your political candidates and popular election of your senators. All of that is the Progressive Party. And if you're not going, yeah, progressives, all of those things are good. Last I checked, all of those things are good. Okay, so on the Democrat side, we have the guy who looks very, very sweet in this image, but also a little wily. With a little frilly collar. Yeah, that's Woodrow Wilson, which I think that collar fits him well, considering who he is. I don't like Wilson. In fact, I think he's top 10 worst presidents of the United States. And I've got a long list of worst presidents of the United States. And so he wanted reform, but not like the same reform. He wanted new freedom with trust busting, supporting small business, and smaller government. Yes, you can have good small government. You probably shouldn't have good small government when the person who's running that good small government's a racist. He is. We know this. This is a fact. Indisputable. He was very, very, very racist. Okay, so like I said, Socialist Party, Eugene V. Debs, the platform for them was anti-capitalism. So, here we go. This is a couple of images of how this looks. Once again, because of the Republican nomination, we have some issues. This is how we have, oh dang, you can't see everything. I didn't think about that. Okay, so, as you can see, because of sweet baby darling Daddy, the Republican Party got split on the ticket, and it was a blowout for Wilson, for the Democrats. Blowout. This is what a frickin' landslide looks like. Excuse me, Trump. You need some help if you thought you had a landslide, because this is the landslide right here. And you can see very clearly the Progressive Party splitting with the Republican Party, how struggle that was. Okay, so what was Woodrow Wilson, who was president from 1913 to 1921? What was his deal? What did he do? He did a lot. For a man who believed in small government, he just followed the train of what Teddy wanted. Because quite frankly, that's what the rest of the nation wanted. And so that's how we're going to see most of our progressive reforms come through, is that there is just momentum that can't be stopped. And I love that. So in terms of reforms, we have tariffs. Woodrow Wilson actually personally went to Congress to ask for lower tariffs. Remember, during the Gilded Age, tariffs went to an all-time high. Like the Dingley tariff, you might recall about that one. Yeah, when they got so high, it's good for big business. It's bad for small farmers. We know this. So, Wilson going to Congress to ask for this is a big deal. The Underwood-Simmons tariff actually lowered the rate to 15%, which is much more reasonable. Now, in terms of reforms for currency and banking, we had some huge problems, like you already know. Obviously, we don't have a centralized banking system anymore. The National Bank of the United States died with Andrew Jackson. I have words in my head, and you know what they are, and they start with an F and end with a K, and the next name is Andrew Jackson. Just like we feel about the Philadelphia Eagles, okay? But not the Cowboys, because the Dallas Cowboys are fantastic, and Dak Prescott is amazing. That was only in my fourth period. Sorry to anyone who I just upset with that. Okay, so banking was totally decentralized. We already know this. The treasury system that had been developed was not very good. And frankly, when the government in 1893 had to ask big businesses for money to be able to run and function, you know you got problems, and you got to fix them. Okay, so the Panic of 1907 also showed that there's a huge problem when there's no lender of last resort. Banks would fail easily. So, like, what does that mean? If you are not, like, federally insured, your bank, if there's a bad panic and people pull their money out, will fail. And you can't have that happen. So the Federal Reserve Act is passed in 1913. So what it does, this is key, is it creates 12 regional Federal Reserve Banks under mixed public and private control. So it's public and private. There's one in Atlanta. I love going there. If you ever have a chance, they do have a free museum, and they have shredded monies that you can get, which I have a bag somewhere. I don't know. Anyways, so the big thing about the Federal Reserve is it could issue currency. Big deal. It also created a Washington-based Federal Reserve Board with the heads of the 12 banks plus presidential appointments controlling the whole system. Y'all, our modern monetary system was set up by Wilson 100 years ago. Big deal. He does even more super duper big deals. Okay, business regulation. No one ever talks about this one, but it's such a big deal. Okay, the Federal Trade Commission Act of 1914. You might have heard in the past couple of years, like 5-10 years, the acronym the FTC. And if you have not, I'm about to explain why they matter. So the Federal Trade Commission is designed to watch and punish unfair methods of competition. Wilson appointed conservatives, so it wasn't totally effective during his time, but the FTC today is the one that is responsible for a concept known as net neutrality. You might have heard of this. You might know about this controversy here, but the idea of net neutrality is that any internet service provider should not be able to force you to pay to have traffic. In other words, that's not a very good description. There's probably much better tech descriptions elsewhere, but net neutrality essentially means that you're not paying for your services to be shared at the same levels on the internet, and that you shouldn't have to pay for like streaming more than you have to pay for like Facebook or Instagram. Like, because of the way net neutrality works, we have access to all of the internet. If you go to other countries where they lack net neutrality, the reality is, if you go to Spain, for example, you can't get Uber. And the reason why is because Uber isn't able to overcome many of their like internet service providers. There's a word for it. I'm too tired to remember. Anyways, the FTC really, really freaking matters when it comes to all kinds of communication-based competition. We will see the FTC and Facebook and Alphabet and every other big tech company facing off in the next 4 years. And you're going to be like, why am I hearing FTC so much? It's because their job is to watch and punish unfair methods of competition. Their job is to break up big tech and to break up big companies and to break up bad mergers and not let it happen. Yeah. FTC, baby! As long as they're smart. In Wilson's time, they were not. In Trump's time, they were not, in my personal opinion, but maybe in yours. Who knows? You like to pay money for things? Go for it. I don't like to pay money for things. I prefer it to be, especially when it comes to education, free. Like, if someone made Khan Academy inaccessible to you, I would literally start rioting, because I think that's unfair. Okay, I've gone on a rant for like 5 minutes. For those of you who didn't want to hear that, sorry, but not sorry. More things that Wilson does. So he gets the Clayton Antitrust Act passed in 1914, which outlawed specific corporate activities, which was much more detailed than the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. It strengthens it, essentially. So no longer is it just fighting in the courts. Instead, we have specific things you don't do as a company. We'll see how long that lasts. So, Wilson's administration actually filed suit against almost 100 companies. So he's getting up into, Taft territory of that trust busting. And then he also did the Keatings-Owen Act in 1916, which outlawed child labor. It gets struck down by the courts in 1918. But you might remember Florence Kelley, beautiful, flawless, great braid from before. Yeah, she's the one who lobbies for that to get passed. Now, in terms of things that I really, really think are important and you should really, really emphasize in your lives when it comes to limiting the workday. Work should not be life. Life should not be work. That would suck. And I believe that firmly. So, the first act that gets passed is the Adamson Act in 1916. It was an 8-hour workday for rail workers. And then there's also the Mueller versus Oregon decision, where the Supreme Court upheld a 10-hour workday for female laundry workers in Oregon. And so this means that the courts were largely moving towards reform too. So that's our Keatings-Owen, cute little babies. There's, see, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. This gets passed. And these are the women who ended up with smaller, or with 10-hour workdays. Okay, other things that get passed. Ooh, sorry, I didn't mean to go that fast. Workmen's Compensation Act in 1916 gave us injury compensation for federal employees. It's a big deal so that you're able to actually get money while you are injured if you're injured on the job. There's also the Federal Farm Loan Act and Federal Warehouse Act of 1916, which helped with farmers to get their loans, and the Federal Highway Act of 1916 as well, which funded road construction. So, the OG highways, probably the ones that don't make sense to you, like Old Highway 5, that was actually funded by the Federal Highway Act of 1916. If you haven't been on Highway 5, it's in Cherokee County. It follows 575. It's stupid. That's all I have to say. I don't recall if Buford Highway is Georgia 13 is what it's known as. If that was Federal Highway Act, I'll have to check that one. Now, on to constitutional reform. So I know I forgot about talking about initiative, recall, and referendum before. I love these three. So when I talked about progressives pulling in participation to democracy, it doesn't just mean people voting. It really bothers me when people are like, the only thing you can do in democracy is vote. That's not true. In fact, in the state of Georgia, you can vote on actual bills when they're referendums. Referendum means that the general public votes on it. Initiative is when the general public can actually write a bill. Now, here in Georgia, we don't have that process. We have a proposal process where you can propose a bill to your legislature, but in places like Wisconsin, through the Wisconsin plan from Robert La Follette, that progressive I talked about before, they actually can write their own bills and submit them to their legislature, which is awesome. And that's initiative. And then the last one is super duper important. It's known as recall. And this is what you do when you have bad, corrupt politicians. You recall them from office. It gives people the power to recall their politicians. And it's a very difficult process, but honestly, it's been done in California. It's been done in Colorado. Most of the western states have initiative, referendum, and recall. Just keep that in mind. So, now, for constitutional reform, on a federal level, we got a crap ton of amendments, 4 of them. So you can read them right here, what they say, but I'll just give you the basics. So the 16th Amendment gets passed in 1913. It's an graduated income tax. Y'all, this is such a beautiful concept. If you don't make a lot of money, we don't tax you a lot of money. If you make a lot of money, we're going to tax you a lot of money because you don't need it as much. Oh, God, it's beautiful. And it means that if you're in the middle class, theoretically, you got an even amount. Even. The 17th Amendment also was passed in 1913. This one's incredible. Oh, I love this one. Our senators used to be appointed by the state, and now we have direct election of our senators. So it's less corrupt. In fact, the House is much less, the Senate as a house is much less high and mighty, and it's much more for the people, by the people. There's also, in 1919, we get Prohibition, the 18th Amendment, before we get the 19th Amendment, which is women's right to vote. So they're going to outlaw the alcohol before they tell ladies they can vote. Oof. Admittedly, the women were the ones who were successful in the 19th Amendment, or the 18th Amendment getting passed. So, I don't know. It's a little crazy. Okay, now I'm going to send us into a little bit different sphere. We got to go into World War I. Okay, a little bit of the foreign policy bits, otherwise before World War I. Wilson said once, "Never again seek one additional foot of territory by conquest," which once again starts to echo those dollar diplomacy thoughts, but still keep a firm hand. So in Latin America, we see Woodrow Wilson continuing the Roosevelt corollary pattern. He actually intervenes in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and the Mexican Revolution, but beside the point. Now, on to Europe. World War I. So we stayed neutral, babies. Neutral for 3 years. Three years. We don't enter the war until 1917, and the armistice doesn't, it's just a year later in 1918. This is largely going to be the end of the progressives, to be honest with you. So war breaks out in Europe in 1914. The U.S. enters in 1917. It distracted people from reform, and that's why the progressives start to die. The war demands fostered corporate consolidation largely, and government repression of radicals and anti-war dissenters ends up fracturing the fragile coalition of progressives, women's groups, trade unions, and socialists. Jane Addams, my girl, got accused of being a communist. She's not. Anyway, so these are the reasons why the U.S. enters World War I. The Zimmermann telegram was sent from Germany to Mexico, and they said if Mexico helps in the war in Europe, that Germany will help them get their territory back from the United States that they lost in the Mexican-American War. That didn't end well. The sinking of the Lusitania, 128 people were on board, Americans included, and that was bad. It was sunk by a German U-boat. On the note of Germans and their boats, they had resumed unrestricted German submarine warfare around March of 1917, and that was bad, because the whole idea in the United States is freedom of the open seas. Let us trade with all of you who are at war. We're neutral. We're Switzerland. Torpedoes do not equate to Switzerland. So that was bad. And then the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia also kickstarts our interest in joining the war, because quite frankly, Britain's gonna lose if the Bolsheviks pull out, which they were doing. So we had to help the British, because we have economic ties to Britain and France, and we really, really needed to keep those. JP Morgan had a bunch of loans out to British and French firms. He needed a return on that investment, babies. He really did. Okay, so what did I've skipped ahead. So we're neutral for 3 years. The election of 1916 was largely thinking about the war in Europe. Progressives considered running Teddy Roosevelt, but he was really a warmonger. Ex-boyfriend is now a U.S. Marine, just like Teddy Roosevelt would love to have been. Anyways, and so he was no longer really the voice of reform. The Republicans and progressives end up choosing a man named Charles Evans Hughes. The Democrat, Woodrow Wilson, wins a close victory. And then by the midterm election in 1918, Democrats had lost both houses to conservative Republicans. The 19th Amendment, with the vote, women lost the issue that bound them and weakened other associated reform movements. And we get a rise of consumer culture. All of this is about like the end of the progressives, largely. So the younger generation was bombarded by ads that defined success and freedom in terms of consumption. And so young women started to reject pre-war feminism, lacking the feminine charm and Maybelline mascara and lipstick that they wanted. Okay, so the last little bit. So this is the American Expeditionary Forces. Those are the American troops overseas. Yes, there were black troops. In terms of at home, we had a variety of different initiatives that were created, such as the Women's Land Army. And so this is women with gardens who were literally producing the food of America. You also see people buying Liberty loans in levels heretofore seen. So what is a Liberty loan? It is a bond. So when you buy a bond, what this means is that you are essentially loaning the U.S. government your money. You get a ticket, a cute little ticket, and in 5, 10, sometimes 15, 20 years, you return that ticket and they give you cash. So the government pays you back with interest. And that was extremely popular during the war as well. However, keep in mind, this was not a popular war for the United States. Those American Expeditionary Forces, do those men look happy to you? No, because they don't look happy to me. We had a Selective Service Act, which is a draft, a conscription of all of these soldiers. Some people were itching to sign up, but most weren't. And that's where George Creel, with the War Industries Board and the, I don't have it. I don't know where it is. I'm sorry. I don't have it. Creel. Crap. I don't remember what board he's on top of. Committee on Public Information or something like that. It's like CPI. I'm so sorry. This should be in front of me. It's not. Anyways, and so George Creel did tons of propaganda like this cute little poster. Let me see. What else do I have? Oh, excellent. So in 1916, we also get our lovely prison convict named Eugene V. Debs running from president from jail. It happens. Okay, now the last thing I want to talk about today, besides the failure of Wilson's 14 points, which I'm about to get to, is the Great Migration of African Americans from the South to the North. And this happens during the start of the war and won't stop until about the 30s. And then we're going to see reverse migration happening in the early thousands with the Rust Belt. Okay, so I'm going to say this poem, but there's a version online. If you just Google One-Way Ticket, Langston Hughes, and go to the videos section on Google, it's such a good poem. I pick up my life and take it with me, and I put it down in Chicago, Detroit, Buffalo, Scranton, any place that is north and east, and not Dixie. I pick up my life and take it on the train to Los Angeles, Bakersfield, Seattle, Oakland, Salt Lake, any place that is north and west, and not south. I am fed up with Jim Crow laws, people who are cruel and afraid, who lynch and run, who are scared of me and me of them. I pick up my life and take it away on a one-way ticket. Gone up north, gone out west, gone. Oh, it's so good. So here you can see what's happening. Even a little bit to Florida, man. So they're all moving north and west towards factories for work during World War I. Okay, so Wilson is an idealist, which is funny considering who he is. The 14 points, they are summarized for you here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will say freedom of the seas was a really big one, as was his hope for creating a League of Nations. That's the last one, and we did not join that. The Senate didn't look kindly on the Treaty of Versailles. Several senators, led by Henry Cabot Lodge, actually rejected said League of Nations as potentially limiting America's freedom in foreign affairs, because we like to meddle. We like to imperialize, as you know. And so Wilson tried to appeal to public options, but he then had a stroke while on a speaking tour and seemed to have quite serious damage to his health and perhaps to his mind too. The treaty is defeated in November of 1919. The U.S. never joined the League of Nations. Dun dun dun. Okay, so this is the end, but I want to make sure that you know that you will be having a take-home. We're going to do part of it in class, but it'll definitely end up being take-home DBQ on the progressives. And so for the rest of the class period, I am going to have you read a really good speech from Teddy Roosevelt so that we can do our philosophical chairs assignment in 1 day, 2 days. And so that way you are a little bit freed up for things for when we have our take-home DBQ. Don't feel like I'm about to be putting a lot of stress on you. You're only going to have like one assignment like that that's big a week, and doing this in class is going to help you a lot, okay? So don't freak out on me.